The evening rush had begun, and the streets of New York pulsed with life. Businessmen in tailored suits hurried past food vendors, couples strolled arm in arm, and taxis honked impatiently at jaywalking pedestrians. In front of an upscale restaurant, the Windsor, a man stood with his hands in his pockets, his worn-out jacket barely shielding him from the cold. Daniel Carter had once walked these streets as an equal. Years ago, he was a promising young professional, a man with a future. But life had a way of unraveling dreams, and after losing his job, his savings, and eventually his home, he had become just another invisible figure in a city that never stopped moving. Hunger gnawed at his stomach as he gazed through the restaurant's glass doors. Inside, waiters in crisp white shirts moved gracefully between tables, serving plates of food that looked almost unreal in their perfection. The warm lighting and soft hum of conversation felt like a world he no longer belonged to. Taking a deep breath, he stepped forward and pulled the door open. Immediately, the scent of roasted lamb and fresh bread wrapped around him, making his stomach tighten with longing. He approached the hostess stand, where a young woman in a black dress looked up and immediately stiffened. "Can I help you?" she asked, her eyes scanning him with thinly veiled judgment. Daniel hesitated. "I was wondering if there's any leftover food at the end of the night, I could." Before he could finish, a man in a dark suit stepped forward. The manager, judging by his confident stance and expensive watch. "We don't do handouts," he said coolly, barely concealing his disdain. Daniel swallowed his pride. "I'm not asking for a handout. I can work. Wash dishes, clean tables, anything." The manager sighed, already losing patience. "Sir, you need to leave." A few customers had started to glance over, their curiosity piqued. Daniel felt the familiar sting of humiliation rise in his throat. He nodded slowly and turned to go. Then, a deep voice cut through the tension. "Wait!" All eyes turned to a man seated near the bar, dressed in a navy blue suit. His silver hair was neatly combed back, his presence commanding without being arrogant. He set down his whiskey glass and stood, walking toward Daniel with a measured stride. "Do you own this restaurant?" the man asked the manager. The manager hesitated. "No, sir, but—" "Then I assume you don't make the rules." The restaurant fell silent. The manager shifted uncomfortably, but said nothing. The man turned to Daniel. "You're hungry." Daniel nodded, unsure of what to say. "Then you'll eat." He gestured toward an empty chair at his table. The tension in the room lingered, but no one dared argue. The manager stepped aside, tight-lipped. Daniel hesitated for only a moment before sitting. A waiter quickly approached, nervous but professional. "What would you like, sir?" Daniel swallowed. He hadn't ordered from a menu in years. "Just whatever's simple." The older man smiled. "Bring him the steak. Medium rare." The waiter nodded and hurried away. Daniel turned to his unexpected benefactor. "I don't know how to thank you." The man waved a hand dismissively. "Don't thank me yet. I have a question for you." Daniel straightened. "Okay. Do you want a second chance?" Daniel blinked. Of all the things he had expected to hear, that wasn't one of them. I don't even know if I deserve one," he admitted. The man studied him for a long moment. "I think you do." He extended a hand. "Callahan. Richard Callahan." Daniel shook it. "Daniel Carter." "Well, Daniel, finish your meal. Then we'll talk." And for the first time in years, Daniel allowed himself to hope. Daniel ate slowly, not out of hesitation, but out of reverence. The steak was tender, rich with flavors he had long forgotten. Each bite reminded him of a life that once felt normal, but now seemed like a distant memory. Across the table, Callahan sipped his whiskey, watching him with quiet curiosity. "You used to be someone, didn't you?" Callahan finally said. Daniel paused, setting his fork down. "I thought I was." Callahan gestured for him to continue. Daniel exhaled, running a hand through his unkempt hair. "I had a good job. I wasn't rich, but I was stable. Then the company downsized, and I was one of the first to go. I thought I'd bounce back, but it wasn't that simple. Bills piled up, savings ran out, and soon enough, I was evicted. After that, well, you stop being a person to most people. You become a problem they don't want to look at." Callahan listened without interruption, his expression unreadable. "And now?" he asked. Daniel gave a short, humorless laugh. "Now, I spend my days trying to stay invisible enough to survive, but visible enough to maybe get help. It's a fine balance." A long silence stretched between them. Then Callahan leaned forward, his fingers tapping lightly against the table. I own several businesses, he said. One of them is Callahan Industries, finance, real estate, investments. I believe in merit, not pity. And I see potential in you. Daniel frowned, uncertain. You don't even know me. I know enough. You didn't beg. You didn't steal. You walked in here and asked to work for a meal. That tells me you have dignity left, even after everything. Daniel swallowed. And what does that mean? It means, Callahan said, that I'm offering you a job. A real one. Daniel blinked, convinced he had misheard. A job? Entry level, Callahan clarified. You'll start at the bottom. No special treatment. You either prove yourself or you don't. But if you're serious about rebuilding your life, this is your chance. Daniel's hands curled into fists under the table. It sounded too good to be true. He had spent so long hearing only rejection that this generosity, felt foreign. Why would you do this for me? He asked, voice barely above a whisper. Callahan leaned back, a ghost of a smile playing on his lips. Because someone once did it for me. Daniel studied him, searching for insincerity, for a hidden agenda. But he found none. I won't waste it, he finally said. Good, Callahan replied. You start tomorrow. The next morning, Daniel stood outside Callahan Industries, gazing up at the towering glass building. The sun reflected off its pristine surface, casting golden light over the bustling streets below. Business professionals strode past him, their expensive suits and purposeful steps reminding him of the life he once had. He adjusted the clean white button-down shirt Callahan had given him. Simple, but far better than the worn, tattered clothes he had lived in for years. His nerves were taut, his hands slightly unsteady as he smoothed the fabric. Could he really do this? Could a man who had spent years at the bottom of society just step back into a world that had forgotten him? Doubt not at him, but he forced himself forward. Inside, the lobby was a vast space of polished marble and high ceilings. A large chandelier hung in the center, its crystal pendants glimmering under recessed lighting. Employees moved with confidence, heads high, phones in hand, their conversations clipped and efficient. A receptionist, a well-dressed woman with sharp eyes, glanced at him as he approached. Can I help you? She asked, her voice polite but laced with skepticism. I have an appointment with Mr. Callahan, Daniel said. Her gaze flickered with doubt as she typed into her computer. But then her eyes widened slightly. Take the elevator to the 20th floor. Mr. Callahan's assistant will meet you there. Daniel nodded, stepping into the elevator. As the doors closed, he took a deep breath. This wasn't just about getting a job. It was about reclaiming his place in the world. The elevator chimed softly as it reached the 20th floor. When the door slid open, a young woman in an elegant navy blue suit greeted him. Mr. Carter? He nodded, and she smiled professionally. Right this way. She led him down a long corridor lined with glass offices. Inside, people worked at sleek desks, focused on computer screens, or engaged in hushed conversations. It was a world of efficiency, power, and precision, a stark contrast to the unpredictable, survival-driven existence he had lived for so long. At the end of the corridor, a set of large oak doors loomed. The assistant knocked once, then pushed them open. Inside, Callahan sat behind a massive mahogany desk, the skyline of New York sprawling behind him through floor-to-ceiling windows. He looked up, nodding in approval as Daniel entered. You came, he said simply. Daniel stood straighter. I said I would. Callahan gestured to a chair. Sit. Daniel did. The leather seat was firm, grounding him in a way he hadn't expected. Callahan steepled his fingers. Let's get one thing straight. You're not here because I feel sorry for you. You're here because I believe you can be more than what life has made you. Daniel swallowed. And what if I fail? Callahan's gaze didn't waver. Then you fail. But not because you weren't given a chance. Silence stretched between them. Then Callahan leaned back. You start in the mailroom. It's not glamorous, but it's a foot in the door. Show me you can handle it, and we'll talk about your future. Daniel exhaled slowly. A chance. A real, tangible opportunity. I won't waste it, he said. Callahan's lips twitched in something resembling approval. See that you don't. Daniel's first day at Callahan Industries felt like stepping into a different reality. The mailroom was tucked away in the lower levels of the building, a stark contrast to the sleek offices above. It was a place of constant movement, with employees sorting, scanning, and delivering envelopes across departments. His supervisor, A middle-aged man named Henry Lawson had a no-nonsense demeanor. "We don't care where you came from, Carter," he said on Daniel's first morning. "We care about how fast you learn. You mess up, and someone upstairs doesn't get their files on time. That means money is lost. And if money is lost, trust me, you don't want to be the one responsible." Daniel nodded, absorbing every word. The first few hours were overwhelming. He was handed stacks of inter-office memos, confidential packages, and a complex list of destinations: legal, finance, human resources, executive suites. The building was a maze, and Daniel had to memorize routes quickly to avoid slowing down operations. By noon, sweat formed at the back of his neck despite the air conditioning. He hadn't worked in years, and his body was still adjusting to the discipline of movement and expectation. At one point, as he waited for an elevator, he noticed two junior executives standing nearby, laughing quietly. One of them glanced at Daniel's name badge, then smirked. "Looks like Callahan's little charity case made it in," the man murmured. His companion chuckled. "Let's see how long he lasts." Daniel stiffened, but kept his gaze forward. He had been at the bottom of society long enough to know when people expected him to fail. "Let them think that," he told himself. "I'll prove them wrong." By the end of the day, his legs ached, and his arms were sore from carrying loads of envelopes and small packages up and down floors. But he hadn't made any major mistakes. That was something. As he clocked out, Henry glanced up from his desk. "You didn't screw up. That's better than most on their first day." It wasn't high praise, but Daniel took it. "See you tomorrow," Henry added. Daniel nodded, leaving the building with a strange sense of accomplishment. For the first time in years, he had something to return to in the morning. Days turned into weeks. The routine of the mailroom became familiar: sorting, organizing, delivering. The work was repetitive, but Daniel didn't mind. He was inside the building, part of something again. Not everyone was thrilled about his presence. The whispers continued, low voices speculating why Callahan had given him a chance. Some called him a project. Others assumed he wouldn't last. But Daniel focused on what he could control. He learned faster than expected, memorized routes, and even helped reorganize an outdated filing system, earning an approving nod from Henry. One afternoon, he stepped into the executive floor with a package for the legal department. As he walked past the glass-walled offices, he caught sight of Callahan in a meeting with several senior executives. The older man's presence was commanding, his gestures measured, his voice calm but firm. It was a reminder that Callahan was not just a man who had helped him. He was a businessman, a leader who had built an empire. Daniel was about to continue when another voice stopped him. "Mailroom guy." He turned to find a young woman leaning against the doorway of an office. She was impeccably dressed in a tailored navy blazer and matching skirt, her dark brown hair pulled into a sleek ponytail. Her eyes were sharp, assessing him with open curiosity. "You're the one Callahan hired," she said, tilting her head slightly. Daniel met her gaze evenly. "That's right." She studied him for a moment before extending her hand. "Elena Callahan. My father owns this company." His stomach tightened slightly. "Callahan's daughter." He shook her hand, keeping his grip firm. "Daniel Carter." She smirked. "I know. People talk. I've noticed." Elena chuckled. "Good. That means you're not naive." She crossed her arms. "I won't pretend to know why my father brought you in, but if he did, he must see something in you. Try not to disappoint him." "I don't plan to," Daniel said simply. She studied him once more before nodding. "Good answer." Then, as if satisfied, she stepped back into her office, leaving Daniel to continue his deliveries. That night, as he lay on the thin mattress in his temporary apartment, a small space Callahan had arranged for him, Daniel replayed the conversation in his mind. Elena's words had been neither cruel nor kind. They were a test, like everything else in this world. He had no intention of failing. Daniel settled into the rhythm of the job, but the weight of expectation never left him. He wasn't just another employee. He was the outsider, the man everyone watched to see if he would fail. Henry, his supervisor, remained tough but fair. "You're keeping up," he admitted one evening as Daniel finished sorting the last batch of inter-office mail. "But don't think that means anything yet. People up there," he nodded toward the executive floors, "they don't forget where you came from." Daniel nodded, understanding. He wasn't naive, but he also knew that every move he made mattered. One afternoon, as he delivered a package to the finance department, he overheard a conversation between two employees near the break room. I don't get why Callahan brought him in. Probably one of those feel-good charity cases. Bet he'll be gone in a few months. Daniel clenched his jaw, but kept walking. He wouldn't waste energy on people waiting for him to fail. Instead, he focused on proving himself in ways that mattered. A week later, Henry asked him to stay late to help clear out an old storage room filled with outdated files. As Daniel worked, he came across a stack of unopened envelopes marked urgent. Confidential. He frowned. Some were months old. His instinct told him something wasn't right. He brought them to Henry, who stiffened when he saw them. Where'd you find these? In the back of the storage room. Henry swore under his breath. These should have been processed immediately. He hesitated, then gave Daniel a long look. This might be above my pay grade. Daniel nodded. Should I take them upstairs? Henry exhaled. Yeah, straight to Callahan. Daniel's pulse quickened. He hadn't seen Callahan since his first day. As he rode the elevator up, he tightened his grip on the files. This was his moment, his chance to show that he wasn't just surviving, but contributing. When he knocked on Callahan's office door, the deep voice inside told him to enter. Callahan looked up from his desk, his gaze sharp as ever. Carter. Daniel stepped forward and placed the files on the desk. I found these in an old storage room. They were never processed. Callahan opened one and scanned it. His expression darkened. These were meant for legal weeks ago. He looked up, his expression unreadable. Good work. Daniel nodded, suppressing the flicker of pride. Callahan closed the folder and leaned back. Do you know why I hired you, Carter? Daniel hesitated. Because you believe in second chances. Callahan's lips curved slightly. Partly, but mostly because I know what it's like to have the world count you out. He tapped the folder. Keep doing what you're doing. The right people are starting to notice. Daniel left the office with a renewed sense of purpose. He wasn't just passing time. He was making a place for himself. And he wasn't going anywhere. Weeks turned into months, and Daniel's quiet dedication didn't go unnoticed. His name was no longer whispered in mockery, but in curiosity. He had proven himself in the mailroom. But more importantly, he had shown Callahan that he was more than just a man in need of a second chance. He was an asset. One evening, Callahan called him into his office again. There's a position open in logistics, he said, eyeing Daniel carefully. It's an entry-level analyst role. It'll mean longer hours, more responsibility, and higher expectations. Daniel didn't hesitate. I'll take it. Callahan nodded, as if expecting the answer. Don't prove me wrong. The transition wasn't easy. The corporate world moved fast, and Daniel had to keep up. He stayed late, studied financial reports, and took notes on every detail that passed through his hands. He had been given a chance, but no one had promised him success. He had to earn it. Some employees still viewed him as an outsider, but others started to respect him. Even Elena Callahan, who had once been skeptical, began acknowledging his progress. Not bad for a mailroom guy, she quipped one afternoon as they crossed paths in the hallway. Daniel smirked. Not bad for the boss's daughter either. For the first time, she smiled. But just when things seemed to be falling into place, an unexpected crisis struck. One evening, while reviewing supply chain reports, Daniel noticed an anomaly. Several shipments of high-value materials were being rerouted through a third-party vendor with no clear paper trail. It was subtle, but it didn't add up. He brought it to Callahan immediately. Callahan's expression hardened as he scanned the documents. If you're right, this is fraud. A formal investigation was launched, and what Daniel uncovered shocked even Callahan. A senior executive had been siphoning company funds through fake supply contracts, costing the company millions. When the scandal broke, Daniel was no longer just a former homeless man trying to prove himself. He was the man who had saved Callahan Industries from a major financial disaster. The board took notice. Employees who had once doubted him now respected him. And Callahan, he called Daniel into his office one last time. You've done more than just earn a job here, he said. You've earned a future. Daniel listened in silence, the weight of the moment settling over him. I want you to stay, Callahan continued. Not as an employee, but as someone with a real future in this company. Daniel took a deep breath. He had started this journey just hoping for a warm meal. Now, he had a career, a purpose, and a life he thought he had lost forever. Thank you, he said simply. Callahan nodded, a rare flicker of pride in his eyes. You earned it. As Daniel left the office, he didn't just feel like a man who had been given a second chance. He felt like a man who had taken it and made it count.